Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome back. Over the past 30 years or so, we've received a plethora of monster taming games, some of which have really caught on and taken it to the mainstream, whilst others have remained quite niche and unknown. Now, with the recent spike in interest with monster taming in general, a lot of people have been going back and checking out some of these older titles, and inevitably the question arises as to whether or not these monster taming studios will take advantage of the upswing. That being said, there are a ton of games that are available for older hardware that isn't widely used or accessible, and today we're going to be talking about 5 monster taming games that I think deserve to be either remade, ported, or remastered to the current generation systems. There are dozens upon dozens of monster taming games that have existed throughout history. However, these are just the top 5 picks that come to mind, but do note that your favorite game may not be on this list, so make sure to let me know which games you have in mind down below. That being said, make sure to sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Okay, so starting things off, we have a couple sets of games, this being the Demi Kids franchise, or known in Japan as Devil Children. This is yet another spin-off of Shin Megami Tensei, and more so tries to appeal to a younger audience, but still manages to be pretty damn cool. A lot of people consider this Atlus's attempt to make a Pokemon rival, however, I just look at it like another monster taming game that's worth giving a look. Now, specifically, I would like to see Red and Black Book remade for current hardware, or even just re-released in English, because if you don't know, the only way to actually get access to these games in English is via a fan translation patch that recently came out. I don't know, I just think the game's pretty cool. It takes a lot of the Shin Megami Tensei monsters and changes them up a little bit, has you explore a new and unknown world, and features more simplistic battles than your typical Shin Megami Tensei game, but isn't brain dead either. It's definitely a hidden gem, and I'd like to make a video on it in the future. Okay, so next up on this list is the original Digimon World, which, if you didn't already know, came out for PlayStation 1, and we do have a spiritual successor in the form of Digimon World Next Order, which recently released, but in terms of a remake of the original, I'd like to see them bring Digimon World 1 into the same sort of 3D world of Next Order. I could easily see them using the same assets from Next Order in order to make this game, and I'd be totally fine with that. I think a lot of issues with the original Digimon World are a product of its time, and by modernizing the game, we could see a much better and smoother gameplay process with tutorials, flashier animations, maybe some more monsters like mega forms and stuff like that, and more. There is a fan remake of Digimon World 1 in the works, which is pretty cool, but I think them stamping that official seal of approval on a remade version of the game would be really hype. Okay, so Jade Cocoon is one of those games that nobody really talked about when it actually came out, at least from what I can remember, but everybody wants to see remade now. The game is a Final Fantasy-esque monster taming RPG that takes advantage of its Studio Ghibli art style to tell a fully crafted story. The game also features a fusion system and its own unique take on the turn-based combat, allowing you to summon your monster allies in combat and fight alongside them. We did play the first one a while back in sort of a let's try format, and there is a second Jade Cocoon, but from what I've heard about the second one, it's kind of like a departure from the original, but I will check that one out as well in the near future. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, Dragon Quest V is one of the pioneers of what we now call the monster taming genre. There is a lot of misinformation that confuses Dragon Quest monsters or Dragon Warrior monsters, which came out a few years after Pokemon, as Dragon Quest's attempt to create a Pokemon-esque game. However, in truth, Dragon Quest V was a Dragon Quest game featuring monster taming mechanics years before Pokemon came out, and while it can definitely argue that Dragon Warrior Monsters was created as a way to capitalize on the success of a title like Pokemon, in reality, the Dragon Quest Monsters series actually existed as an expansion to the mechanics that were present within Dragon Quest V, a title that in part did actually inspire the original Pokemon game. Now, that said, I have really selfish reasons for wanting this game to specifically be remade. I think it would shut a lot of people up who throw around the Pokemon clone accusations at every monster taming game they see if suddenly we get a grand remake for a video game developed way back in the early 90s that has some similarities to Pokemon, a game that wouldn't come out until years later. In terms of how they could do this remake, honestly, I'd love to see them take the assets that they have with Dragon Quest XI, the new Dragon Quest monsters, Dragon Quest treasures, etc., and basically remake the game from the ground up. Essentially a fully 3D version of Dragon Quest V that players can experience on the Switch, and if they really want to go for the more nostalgic players, they could also offer a 2D mode like they do in Dragon Quest XI. I know the game was re-released on the DS, however, I think a full remake would be pretty dope. Okay, so out of all of the games on this list, this one is one of, if not the most selfish, but that's Micromon, the predecessor of Nexomon, which was created in 2014 in this case. This game does technically exist as part of the Nexomon timeline. Basically, this is a game that has you in some sort of strange simulation where creatures called Micromon exist, and outside of that, I don't really know much because I can't actually play the game since it's been taken down from the App Store, and the only downloads I could find were kinda shady. The way it works into the Nexomon world is that this simulation was created as an escape for people due to Omnicron's rule, and while it is only really loosely connected to Nexomon in terms of the importance of the main story of that game, I would really like to see this ported over to Switch. And I'm not saying it has to be fully 3D like what Nexomon 3 is going to be. I'm talking a straight port adjusted for consoles like they did with the re-release of Nexomon 1. There are actual references to Micromon in Nexomon 1, including a character. So I definitely would like this missing piece of the timeline to be unearthed from its grave. But yeah, there you go, guys. Those are my top 5 monster taming games I'd like to see remade or remastered for the current generation in 2023. Obviously, the logistics behind actually having these games come out this year specifically probably wouldn't pan out, but this is currently how I feel in 2023, and maybe next year we'll do another video like top 5 remakes I'd like to see in 2024 or something like that. But if you want to see me talk about more classic games, definitely let me know in the comments below. If you do want to stay up to date on all things monster taming, this is the #1 place to be for daily monster taming content. You can check out my Twitter, Discord, and Patreon as well, linked below. And special thanks to the patrons, especially Jim Hamilton, Dro Ghost, Dark Persona Exodus, and Candy Morency. And we'll see you next time. Peace.